here on College Football Now. We just got the College Football Playoff Committee's top 25, so we're going to go ahead and re-break it down with some more depth for you guys. We'll start in the top 6 here. Look at the College Football Playoff bracket, James. Bama at number 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4, the Aggies and the Florida Gators at number 6. No changes in the top 6. Not a real surprise. We thought maybe A&M jumps Ohio State, but I think this was pretty obvious.
In my opinion, Alabama wins their next game against Arkansas coming up on Saturday. They win, they're in. They could lose to Florida. Both teams end up getting in. I don't think they have anything. If they take care of business against Arkansas, Alabama is in the college football playoff.
Yeah, so the Crimson Tide scenario, very simple. Notre Dame scenario, maybe not as simple. That ACC title game is set. They are number 2. I do think there is a scenario in play because I think a lot of people assume, if Notre Dame, even if they lose to Clemson, they're in. What if they lose by 30 with Trevor Lawrence back?
Right?
That's the scenario, I think, especially if you're Ohio State and you may not have the Big Ten title game. Like, Clemson, hammer Notre Dame. That's what you're rooting for if you're some of these teams outside of the top 3 or 4. So they are number 2. Clemson holds at 3. And then the Buckeyes, who a lot of drama around them right now, James, they are your number 4 team in the college football playoff rankings.
All right, we'll get back here in a minute, but I'm going to ask you guys to grade the College Football Committee's rankings this week. We ask you this every single show. There's only 2 more shows after this one, next Tuesday and then Sunday the 20th. But grade this week's A, B, C, D, or F. Light up the comments. I see Africa Rising with a C, Griffin with a C. I got Centrella Ingram with an A, Joe Driscoll with a B-, Seth Tatum with an A, Bryce with a C-. I got an F from, they're coming in fast now, so appreciate that. Stephanie Farrell with a B. We got a super chat in from Tom Downey's burner account. Hope Ohio State gets screwed out of a spot. We'll get that up on screen here in a few minutes. We are alumni. So, Tom, we broke it down. The Tom Downey burner account, Penn State fans. So maybe we can start narrowing it down. Our investigative reporters, keep that one rolling. So Ohio State, right? Look, this is a team that came in number 2 in the country. I think, frankly, last year, 2019 Ohio State was one of the top 3 or 4 teams of all time to not win a national title, right?
They had about 5 critical errors in that loss to Clemson in the semifinal. Otherwise, they probably win by like 17.
Sure.
Like, they totally outplayed Clemson. A couple of, weird plays here, a late interception by Justin Fields. But I'm with you. Talent on the roster, undeniable. This is a loaded team.
No, they've got some issues. They've given a lot of passing yards. Indiana lit them up to the passing game, and they can't run themselves. They had a nice game, Trey Sermon on the ground this past weekend, Master Teague a little bit. But running game and defensive, pass defense has been the issues. But I think all in, if I'm putting my money on, if I'm trusting somebody, it's Alabama, it's Ohio State are my top 2 teams as far as who I trust to get the job done.
I'd put Clemson in that category. I think it's 3 teams, which is weird to say. It's like I don't feel like we're dumping on Notre Dame. It's just like I need to see more, right? I mean, they just haven't – it's not proven over years and years of time, whereas those other 3 teams are.
Let's take a look at the top 10 here, Harrison. Miami at number 10. Any chance they get in your opinion?
No, they can't get to the ACC title game. I don't think there's a path for them. Same with Georgia, 2 losses. Can't get to the SEC title game. They are out, but they are number 9. Cincinnati, I think them getting jumped by a two-loss Iowa State team pretty much ends their hopes, right? Like, I don't think there's any scenario for Cincinnati. They also had their game canceled this week for COVID issues against Tulsa. They'll play them in the AAC title game next week. And then Iowa State might be the only 2-loss team that has a chance at 8-2.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd love to see Cincinnati get in because I'd love to see what Luke Fickell could do. And frankly, Cincinnati is one of the things I'm glad we have in college football because Ohio State has needed an in-state rival forever. Yep. And kind of they finally have one with their former one-year interim coach, 6-7 in the 2011 season, Luke Fickell, which is kind of crazy to see. But we got a super chat coming in from Swamparamus.
Swampasaurus.
That's a Mitchell Renz moment for me. Ohio State needs to call Texas A&M because this is the only shot Texas A&M has to get in the Final Four. Well, I get what you're saying, but that logic doesn't make any sense. Why would Ohio State do an SEC team a favor? If Ohio State need to get in the Final Four, maybe they would.
That's fair. I do agree with the point, though. Like, if you're A&M, you should try to be playing Ohio State. You know why? Because you can't get to the SEC title game. Yeah. I know they're number 5, but what's their path moving up into the top 4? Their game against Ole Miss canceled. They have one more game, I believe, against Tennessee. I think A&M doesn't have enough, data points, right?
Yeah.
You can't just lean on that Florida win. That's not going to be enough.
So what I see with Texas A&M, whether or not they get a random last-second game from Ohio State, which is quite unlikely, I think, between the SEC and the Big Ten, is they need Clemson to, I guess – I guess they need a Notre Dame to blow out Clemson, right?
I think just beat them.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I guess you're right.
Two losses. You're right. You're right on that. Saying, but maybe the other side, if Clemson beats Notre Dame by 30, maybe Texas A&M looks a little bit nicer versus Notre Dame losing by just a touchdown or 10 points.
I think you need Clemson to win if you're A&M. You need Alabama to bury Florida, get them out of there.
And then it makes you look better, too, if Alabama buries Florida, right?
I agree. No doubt about it. We'll go through the rest of these rankings here, 11 through 15. Oklahoma at 11. If they crush Iowa State and some crazy stuff happens, maybe, but two-loss team going to have a lot of challenge getting into the top 4. Indiana at 12. They've had a great season under Tom Allen. They continue to slug away even with their backup quarterback. Coastal Carolina, probably the story of college football, quite frankly, with what they've done in just their 4th year of FBS football. They're number 13, and then Northwestern and USC rounding out your top 15. I think we're in agreement. Pac-12 doesn't have a path to the playoffs.
They don't have and they shouldn't have a path. No. I mean, they were willing and ready to cancel their entire season. I don't know what made them change their mind, but they did. But I think that in general, the fact they started so late, it's gotta disqualify them.
The only reason they changed their mind is I think they came to the realization they would not have a spring schedule. They'd have no opponents to play. So you just saw 16 through 20, 21 through 25, Colorado, Oklahoma State, NC State, Tulsa, and Missouri got to sneak another SEC team into the top 25 as per tradition there. So obviously the focus on Ohio State tonight. Texas A&M, were they going to jump them? But the top 6 does not change. We'll get into some live Q&A in a little bit. What's live Q&A? You submit your questions. James and I answer them for you guys. Question and answer. It's a really tough acronym there. Use hashtag CFB or Super Chat. We'll get to your questions as soon as we can. Just a couple of minutes from now. Just to kind of put our thoughts kind of rounded out here, James. The top 6 doesn't change here. Ohio State's the team to watch. The Big Ten's the conference to watch. How do they handle this situation over the next really 3 to 5 days, in my opinion? You got to come up with a solution very, very soon.
The Big Ten needs to swallow their pride. Michigan AD Ward Manuel, who you wouldn't think would step up and go to bat for Ohio State, he went in his press conference talking about the Ohio State game canceled. He said, hey, we made this decision months ago and we didn't know all the things we're going into, Corona, yada, yada, yada. He said Ohio State's clearly should be in the championship game, and if not, they should be in the college football playoff. I agree with him. Look, I don't want Ohio State. It does nothing for me for Ohio State to be better, but I also recognize that I would hate for my team to be in the same situation and then to be left out because other teams canceled on me.
If the Big Ten wants to maximize revenue, they'll change their rule. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
So, and I think now they got an excuse with Indiana having COVID issues. So now you can just be like, well, Indiana, they've had a great season, but they may not be ready, so we're going to put Ohio State in. And we know the rules can be bent for certain programs, and I think Ohio State is certainly one of those programs. So just to recap, your top 6, Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4, Texas A&M 5, and Florida 6. You're watching College Football Now. I am Harrison Graham. He is James Yoder. We're going to take some of your questions on today's show and perhaps dive into a little bit of recruiting as well. Let's start with Carson Bennett here asking, what teams can make a big jump on signing day? Few days away from National Signing Day here, James, and there's still a lot of top recruits that remain unsigned.
Yeah, coming up in 8 days from now, next Wednesday is National Signing Day, the early National Signing Day, which I find a little odd because it's in the middle of Conference Championship Week. I think they should have adjusted that a little bit, but nevertheless, so I think it might be a good time, Harrison. We can take a look who are the top 10 uncommitted prospects. I think when you see who we predict where these prospects go, it will help us understand who has a chance to get a big-time signing day splash coming up here on the early signing period on December 16th.
Appreciate your question, Carson. So let's take a look at some of these top prospects. Corey Foreman, the number 1 available recruit, the defensive end. Where do you see him potentially landing on signing?
Look, people have compared him. 24/7 Sports compared him to a Cameron Jordan of the Saints, also a California guy. Ironically, he's from Corona, California. Shout out that 2020 prospect. I think he's going to end up at USC. He has flirted with a lot of schools: Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. Ultimately, it sounds like he's going to end up at his hometown USC Trojans when it comes down to signing day coming up next Wednesday. And by the way, a lot of these guys, this isn't the final signing day. So if some of these prospects we'll talk about aren't the if they're not enrolling early, they don't have to technically sign until February, but most will sign coming up next Wednesday. But I ask you guys this question. I think USC, you guys predict in the comments your 2021 top recruit in the country, Corey Foreman. Where will he sign coming up here on National Signing Day, December 16th, next Wednesday?
Our next top recruit that remains unsigned, JT Tuimaulau, the defensive end as well, the number 3 overall recruit. Tell me a little bit about him. Where does he end up landing?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. The state of Washington has 2 of the top 7 or 8 prospects in the country, which is actually very rare. They got a 5-star defensive end. Here, they've also got a 5-star wide receiver. But he has been looking around a lot. He's been talking about Ohio State, he's been talking about USC, he's been talking to a bunch of other schools. Comparison is Cameron Hayward of the Steelers from Ohio State. But if you're a defensive end right now with the Bosa brothers and with Chase Young, why would you not go to Ohio State? And ultimately, that's where I've got him projected. He's going to be Ohio State's, I think, 6th 5-star recruit in this 2021 class.
We'll go a little quicker pace on some of these guys as we get further down the list. Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver, top 10 player in the country.
Yeah, the comp for him is actually Juju Smith-Schuster of the Steelers, a USC player. I thought this was going to be Ohio State. I thought they were going to absolutely have the most ridiculous class to start the season.
Looked like they were for a while.
I thought he was Ohio State. Seems to me he went to Oklahoma this past weekend, was thrown around with their 5-star quarterback, Caleb Williams.
Yep.
It sounds like he's going to end up at Oklahoma sooner.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley making a late push for this class, perhaps. We'll see if he can get a couple of these guys down the stretch. Before we get through our next couple of players, if you want more college football coverage, this is the place for you. Subscribe to Chat Sports. National Signing Day is just around the corner, and we will have the latest news and rumors around that. Also, college football hot boards. Coaches are getting let go left and right. If they get fired, we will have a lit video on most of those teams. So go ahead, subscribe, and yes, we'll continue to break down the college football playoff rankings as well. Tristan Lee is next up here, number 11 overall player, the offensive tackle.
And I think this is a situation where all of a sudden it's all coming together. You got Caleb Williams out of the Washington, D.C. area. Fairfax, not too far away. He's from Fairfax, Virginia. His offensive tackle, I think he's going to go to Oklahoma is where I'm projecting him.
So Buka and Lee heading to Oklahoma, according to James Yoder. We will see what these kids do on National Signing Day. We'll pick it up here. Terrence Lewis, the number 16 player, the linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, I've got him. I mean, it's really interesting to see. I don't know if I understand where he's going to go. He decommitted from Tennessee about a week ago. He's been committed to them for a while. Visited Auburn 2 weekends ago. Decommitted right after that. So I think the writing on the wall for him, he's going to end up with the Auburn Tigers.
Auburn Tigers. Those are your top 5 uncommitted recruits. We got 5 more players to break down here on college football now. Mason Smith. Yes, that's spelled correctly. 2 A's on his name. A defensive tackle out of Louisiana.
I got word in my ear. LSU insider Carter Bryant has him pegged to the LSU Tigers and Coach O. So I think that's where he's going to end up being an LSU Tiger when all is said and done.
Makes sense. Coach O needs to get things back on track. Xavier Sori next up here, the linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, a very, very fast player from what I've been told. I watched a little bit of his film. I've got him going to Alabama. People say Kiko Alonso or Devin Bush as his comparison of what he projects to in college. So he's going to go to Alabama. Probably the best linebacker school in the country over the past decade or so.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Nick Saban's always got linebackers. Kamar Wheaton, a running back out of Garland, Texas.
Another player, you're going to see a theme here, right? They got the best quarterback in the country, Caleb Williams. You saw the best receiver in the country, one of the best few tackles. I've got him going to Oklahoma. Heading north, he's from Dallas area in Texas. He's going to head north, go to the Oklahoma Sooners.
Something tells me Lincoln Riley ain't going anywhere. He's got a big class potentially coming in here. Number 9 here, Shamar Turner, another defensive end here.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't followed his recruiting a ton, but from everything I've read and everything I've seen and been told, he's been Texas A&M all the way. We'll see what happens, but he is a 6'4", 290-pound player. Defensive end in high school, a lot of people project him to move inside a defensive tackle once he gets to college.
A shift in this state the past couple of years, Jimbo Fisher out-recruiting Tom Herman. Next up here, Tumishe Adalele. That is how you pronounce his name. Another defensive end. Lots of defensive ends who got to make decisions soon.
A lot of big guys. A lot of tough to pronounce names in this top 10 uncommitted recruits. So shout out to Harrison for getting those pronunciations down. He moved his announcement back. Now a lot of people have him leaving the Dallas, the Texas area, going out of state to Alabama. But he was supposed to make a decision on signing day, moved it back. He won't decide till the Saturday after signing day, December 19th. I've still got him plugged at Alabama, but we will see. Switching your announcement to December 19th, 4 or 5 days after signing day, maybe you want to add a little more information. Maybe you want to see where other prospects are going. Another player in your position goes to Alabama. Maybe he goes somewhere else.
Or maybe it's 2020 and these kids want their own day to make a decision.
Very
because
true.
That's the social media era we live in. We got college football face masks on sale. Chatsports.com/ CFB masks. We got solo packs all the way up to 3-packs. You can get these neck ones. It's starting to get cold, so that would be a good option for you guys. These 3-packs look great as well. Those are the best bang for your buck, by the way, the 3-packs. That's how you're going to maximize your value.
It's such a
there.
good deal to go buy these things. And I'll tell you what, if you have a sports fan in your life, just go use them. Go buy a couple packs. Do them as a stocking stuffer for a friend, a boss, a coworker, whoever is a dad. It's better than a tie, that's for sure. So go to chatsports.com/CFB masks.
Before we sign off on tonight's live show, the third edition of the College Football Playoff Rankings released. If you're just joining us, let's go ahead and hit the top 6 one more time. Alabama holds firm. Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Florida. Those are your top 6. Real quick, in 30 seconds or so, anything stand out to you either right now or moving forward?
Well, it'll be interesting to me because I think all in what all 4 of these top 4 teams is, I don't think anybody wants to play Alabama, which is clear. I think everybody wants to play Notre Dame, right?
Yes.
And so if Notre Dame loses to Clemson, there's just going to be a lot of positioning and politicking inside the committee and potentially outside the committee. If that Notre Dame game against Clemson, if they lose close, is there a chance they keep Notre Dame at 3 over undefeated Ohio State, make Ohio State face Alabama in a 1 versus 4? Also think about this. Could Alabama lose to Florida? Florida jumps in. Then who's number 1? Is it Notre Dame? Is it Ohio State? It's really going to be fun to see. I think Ohio State fans are still very bitter about last year not getting the number 1 seed. LSU got that. They had to face Clemson, kept them out of the national title game versus getting the Oklahoma throw-in game.
The only problem with that scenario is, do you want Clemson Notre Dame Part 3? Because that's what happens in that scenario, and I think the committee would probably try to avoid that.
Even though they say they won't, but of course they would in that scenario, absolutely. The rest of your top 10, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Georgia, and the Miami Hurricanes. Iowa State's going to try and win their first conference title in about 100 years.
Let's fix that, by the way. Iowa State was number 7. Cincinnati was 8. Those were our projected rankings from earlier for 7 through 10. Iowa State 7, Cincinnati 8 on that one. So 11 through 15 here, Oklahoma, Indiana, Coastal Carolina, Northwestern, and USC. And we've agreed the Pac-12 just does not have a path
Coastal
here.
Carolina, Myrtle Beach's finest, baby.
How about this? Cincinnati and Coastal in one of the New Year's Six. Who says no? It's 2020.
This is why I need to call for a college football commissioner, because things like the BYU Coastal Carolina game, Texas A&M Ohio State,
great
would
for college
happen.
Football.
Have someone who just says that would be awesome. Let's do it. I like your idea, Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati. Just make it happen in a bowl game. Let's go through the college football map, Harrison. Take us through what people need to do, what needs to happen for these teams to get in the college football playoff.
Let's look at the first top 5 or 6 teams, and then we'll call it a night. Alabama, it's simple. You win against Arkansas. Unless you lose by 50 in the SEC title game, you're in. So you get to the SEC title game unbeaten, Bama's in. Notre Dame, I think as long as if you're competitive against Clemson, if you don't get blown out, I think it's going to be tough to leave them out. Obviously, the simpler scenario, just beat Clemson again. That is their scenario. Clemson went out and they're in. Losing the ACC title game, they're out. I don't think a 2-loss Clemson team can get in, especially if they lost again at full strength, because Trevor Lawrence would be expected to play, obviously. Florida, it's simple. You went out and you're in. If you lose the game, you're done. I think if they beat the Crimson Tide with 1 loss on the road to A&M by 3 points, you're not leaving an SEC champ out in that scenario.
Kind of crazy thing about your top 2 teams. They control their own destiny, but also they could lose a game and still make the playoff, most likely, both of them.
And the reason we have Ohio State in the needs help category, James, is because they may not be able to play in the Big Ten title game. There's a lot of decisions that got to be made. The game against Michigan is canceled, which means they're below that 6-game threshold for the Big Ten's rules for this COVID season. Will they change them? Perhaps. You cover the Big Ten closer than I do as host of the Michigan Football Report. There's been a lot of drama with Kevin Warren and that whole situation the past 4 or 5 months.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think the Big Ten will come to its senses. They'll make some sort of change, get Ohio State either a game this weekend to be eligible, or they'll just change the rule and get them in the title game whether they play a game or not. That is our show today. I am James Yoder. This has been Harrison Graham. Make sure you subscribe. We will be back next Tuesday with our second to final college football playoff rankings.